Hello and welcome to Second Chance Gambling Addiction and Mental Health Recovery. Joining me on my first guest appearance, True Story, My Story episode is my friend Jamie Dyson. Um, just in case you was wondering with the COVID, we are in a support bubble because we have a child under the age of 1. So him and his wife are in our support bubble. But it also happens that we've both suffered from gambling addiction and mental health issues. And I'm going to hand you over to Jamie now. But first of all, thank you for coming on and telling your story. It is all to help others, and hopefully, you will benefit from hearing Jamie's story as well as a few questions at the end that I will ask him. And hopefully, like I said, someone out there will benefit from this. So, over to Jamie.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you for having me on your channel to explain my experience over the past 10, 11 years that I've been gambling prior to me stopping. Well, you'll all be asking me really, where did it all start? Well, I was 17. Prior to that, as a child, my family used to bet a lot on not a lot, but every year on the Grand National, which, to be honest, at that time, I never used to think anything of it. I know I used to pick a number and I used to want it to win, but I don't think, as I sit here now, I don't think that was a trigger that set it off. Or I know there's triggers that we talk about, triggers and setting how we set ourselves off. But I think, to be honest, I think the main thing that springs to my mind was when I was 17. I actually placed my first bet, again illegally. I went into the bookmakers, and there was a couple of us guys who were doing mechanical engineering in Rotherham, the college in Rotherham, and I put my first bet on, and to be honest, it was, at the time, I didn't know too much of it, and I know, like yourself, Kieran, when you first place your bet, you don't really know what you're doing, but it was an accumulator I'd say about that long, and with loads of football teams on, and I thought, great. I thought I saw the potential winnings, and I thought this will be fantastic. If I can place one of these every weekend, and I've got a good chance of winning, haven't I? So I told myself, and it wasn't until, I reckon, a few months after that, placing my first bet at college when I was 17, that I realised that I was doing it more frequently, and it was coming a bane in my life. And to be honest, I did realise that it was becoming out of hand, but I didn't want to say anything at the time. And again, I was 17, and I knew that people in my family, for a start, they'd have a bet, and my uncle always used to say, make sure that you could bet more than you, never bet more than what you could afford. And I couldn't grasp that. I started a couple of years after that. I started my first job in Sheffield at a steelworks, and every day that I was there as an apprentice, and after my time, I always had a bet on. I can never think of a day that I'd never had a bet on. And I'm actually in an apprenticeship. I was in a privileged position. I was lucky to have an apprenticeship at the big steelworks in Sheffield. And to be honest, I was blowing my money away left, right, and centre. At the time, I was living at Rotherham. I was renting in Rotherham with my girlfriend, now wife. And it was a massive thing for me that I was sleeping, and I were having dreams about my next bet. I'd wake up in the morning thinking, great, what am I doing next? But it'd be football, it'd be tennis, it'd be horse racing. I was a massive sports gambler, but there were slots, there were anything to win money. I'd have a go on, but it was football, and it was sport that I know myself. My friend Kieran knows that that was my biggest bugbear when I was gambling. And it just carried on from there. And as time progressed, it got worse. And I still didn't say anything. My wife, I used to ask for money, and that I'd let the next bet roll, it'd lose. I'd ask for more money. And this continued. I've been with my wife since 2009 now, 2020. So a lot of years she's had to put up with a lot of heartache. So I mean, I only can tell my story, but for anyone out there who's struggling, or has any similarities in the way that I'm talking and saying the acts that I used to carry out, I mean, I would say just please try your hardest to nip it in the bud, because as time goes on, it worsens. The gambling urges worsen. The addiction just gets to you. And to be honest, the person that I always look at myself now, as when I was younger, as a child. That's the closest thing that's come that I can think that springs to mind that I was my 100%, that I was my true self. And then the addiction, as time goes on, it changes you into a monster, into a demon. And you lose a lot of your family. You'll go out for meals, you have big events on, people's weddings, people's birthdays, and you're constantly on your phone. You're thinking about your next bet. And not just that, you're just thinking about, not just on your phone, it was just, for me, well, which bookies can I go to next? Which one will be giving me the best prices, best odds? I mean, it was constant. The amount of strength, that it zaps out of you, it's just unbelievable. And then, like I say, it's building up the courage and realizing that you've got a problem. I mean, I started after I mentioned the steelworks in Sheffield, where I was gambling every day and blowing money away. I had got an interview to go to a highly responsible job that I'm in currently in the moment, and I must admit that when I did, I was privileged to get that job, and the first few months into that job, I was doing exactly the same, even though it was a lot more money. And I know money's not a massive factor if as long as someone's happy. I mean, that's the main thing for myself. But again, that wasn't enough for me to stop and to speak out. And at GA that I'm at the minute, we talk about step one, and that's basically admitting that you're powerless over gambling. And I didn't want to admit that. And it carried on and carried on, where it got to a stage where in June 2018, with myself, Kieran, and I'm forever grateful for that still, and my wife, it was Kieran's initial idea because he'd been to GA for many years before myself, and I didn't want to know, to be honest. It was Kieran and my wife that pushed me to go, and I were always, even before I stopped gambling, and before my first ever meeting at GA, I always used to say to him, I'm not as bad as all of you at GA and Kieran. And I look in the mirror now and I just see a petulant child just not wanting to admit that he basically doesn't want to admit defeat of a gambling. Because I'll admit to this day, I did not want to bet. I was forced to go to GA. And I know gamblers, I'm mentioning GA, sorry, I mean Gamblers Anonymous, for those of you that are out there and are seeking any help. But
you really didn't want to go, did you?
No, I didn't want to go, no.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there was some fear of perhaps being judged or perhaps being sat and made a fuss of from fellow members. And by all means, this channel is not just to push Gamblers Anonymous, because there's other help out there. Some people prefer one-on-one counselling. We are just telling our experience and what worked for us. But yeah, you didn't want to go to Gamblers Anonymous, and I remember that conversation that day. But really, if you look back now, the turning point in you deciding to go really has benefited you, hasn't it? And from what you found in that first meeting, can you just benefit of viewers just because I know what your reaction was both in the meeting and when you came out, and if you can just relay sort of that, it probably would benefit someone who may be thinking about attending either online meetings or in person.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm so grateful for you getting me to that first meeting and pushing me there, Kieran. And for anyone out there listening, the feeling after you tell your story at Gamblers Anonymous and that first meeting I walked into that room in Rotherham, I felt welcomed. Everybody, and I mean everybody there, they don't judge you. They're not exactly the same as you, but same as in gambling. But we've all got different stories and what have you. But the help at GA is second to none. And I'm so thankful for everyone there. I mean, I was welcomed with open arms. I went in there just thinking it's not going to be for me. I had it in my head that, as I said before, prior to that meeting and saying to Kieran and my wife, I'm not as bad as everyone else at GA. That I had it in my head that I was going to carry on. Now, I told my story. Spent many of the meeting on myself, and there were a lot of home truths and a lot of stuff hurt. And a lot of stuff, it was strange in a way because I was telling my story to people, and it was like everything was being echoed, and it was heightened when I was in that room because it really hit home that everything that I'd done and meant me go to that place, Gamblers Anonymous, to get the help that I needed. I mean, I walked out of that meeting and it was all I can explain is I always say to this day, just picture your temples being, sometimes when you get an headache, the pressure on your temples and the pulse that you get is not the nicest feeling. I mean, I walked out of that meeting and it felt like my head felt light, but in a good way, as though I once said weight was lifted from my shoulders, but my head felt clear, and it was good that I got everything out this in the open. As I say at GA, never leave, don't leave anything out. Just like they say for when you're gambling, when you're not what taking GA away from this, if you tell someone everything, then it makes a problem a lot better in the long run. But I mean, anyone who's struggling, GA is, and if you've not tried it like myself, and I weren't willing to, like I say, to try it, please give it a go. It could be the changing point in your life that you need to make your life and the loved ones around you their lives even better, because I can't take back the time that I come downstairs and I'd say to my wife, speak to her like rubbish and say, put some more bloody money, shall we say, into my account. I need some more money. And I know Kieran knows, I mean, we used to gamble a lot together, didn't we, in the past as well. So it's hitting home now to me, speaking to you guys and girls. It's emotional, but I think it comes from ourselves. Yes, it's the addiction, as we speak about it, Gamblers Anonymous. That's not our true personality and traits. It's the addiction that takes over. But we've got to want to do it for ourselves, which I admit to this day I wasn't willing to do. Again, I was forced by Kieran and my wife. But 27th of June 2018, that what I can say, that was the date of my last bet.
2.5 years.
2.5 years, yeah. So, touch wood. I remain gamble free, but again, it's one day at a time. But again, congratulations. I mean, congratulations to yourself as well, Kieran, for doing 2 years.
Yeah,
on the
we
27th.
both changed his life around, and like you touched on there, we used to gamble together, and I'm sure there will be other people out there who, yeah, they will gamble in isolation on their own, secretive, but there will be also gamblers out there who gamble with their friends, and in in our experience, if you are gambling with someone on a regular basis, it can be very much a detrimental idea really to your finances, your mental well-being, because you are close to someone who is gambling a lot also. The temptation's always there. Whether you've got the money or not, you'll find the money. If he has a big win or she has a big win, you'll think, why can't I? Can I do that? Vice versa. And the encouragement in doing that is also there. So my only speaking from my experience is, if you are gambling with someone else quite regularly, be it online or in person, I'd try and at least take a break from that for a period of time, and just to see whether you get any better on, because our experience is, I mean, we got to one stage, it started where we would just have a game of snooker and have a gamble on winner, £10-15, figures irrelevant really. And it started that, just playing for a few pound against each other at snooker. And of course, if the gambler in us, if he beat me, I'd tell him I'll see him next Tuesday and call him a bunch of names, and to be honest, be vile, and he would be to me, because that's that gambler. We want to win. We want to win money. But then it developed into where we was lying to each other's missuses. He might say, what did you say to your wife?
Many things, but yeah, I mean,
We used to lie.
I used to lie. I used to. There was an instant. I think the one that you're on about, Kieran, is the one that I was getting someone a present and I needed some money, or Kieran needed some money, and then I'd spend that money and I'd gamble it all. So the lies and the deceit is just.
You look back now, and it's almost, you've got to laugh, otherwise you'll cry, because some of the stuff we did, all in order to get that bet on, we would cause so much destruction, as I touched on in my story, and Jamie's touched on in his. But it's important that through telling our story, we also highlight what you can do. And like I've said, I'll just reiterate, and I'm sure Jamie will. If it's not Gamblers Anonymous for you, there's other help out there. There's Gambler Aware, there's counselling, individual counselling as well, that you can get on gambling addiction or any addiction, and mental health in general, because gambling and mental health, to me, in my experience, almost go hand in hand. Just touching on that mental health itself, I know yourself, you've recently had some terrible news within family, but before that, you've been through your highs and lows as well, haven't you? And what would you say about your experience with mental health, and also the help out there, what you've found helpful for you, and how you've got through situations?
What I'd say is I think again, a bit like with when we first admit that we power ourselves of gambling, we have our physical health, we also have as mental health. And we know sometimes when you get an injury, you're not 100%. It's exactly the same, no different from the mental side of things. I mean, there's no, everyone's different, but there's nothing wrong. We've all got mental health at the end of the day. We've all got mental health. It's just at the levels what we're at. Some people suffer more than others. And it's when our bodies and our minds are not feeling how we used to feel. And again, I always think back to when I was a kid, when you don't have a care in the world, when you've got no worries. But it's actually when you grow up and become a young adult into a grown woman or a grown man that you realise and you feel these things. And again, you touched upon it about with a recent loss in the family not so long back. It helps you deal with situations like that, along with, yes, it does help not betting, no, not gambling, and them to coincide with each other, the mental health side of things and the gambling. For my experience, now I'm not saying for everyone else, because some people don't gamble and they suffer from mental health issues as well. Again, in my personal experience, going to GA and speaking has helped me tenfold. Pardon the pun. To speak out in general, and when I'm not feeling so good, I know that I have a counsellor in Doncaster that I have every couple of weeks, and it just keeps me topped up and keeps me going, and it keeps me it just keeps me on my toes, and I know that at times I'm not going to have the best of days, and it's recognising when those days come that I put them into practice. And again, this goes back to as not feeling ourselves in our brains and what's going on with his bodies, and an instinct that if we're not feeling right, we need to speak to someone. And again, like I've touched upon on the gambling side of things, I had to do it. I had to admit, step one, that I was powerless over gambling, and we have to do it for ourselves, for our mental health. We've got to speak up and get help. It might be a group, it might be a one-to-one, anything, or it might be just talking to a relative. Me and you, a lot of the time, I know we suffer from it a lot, and we do talk about it. And I know you ring me up and vice versa. So I would just reiterate that for anyone out there that's struggling with it, then seek help, like I did. Again, I recognise. When I'm having down days, I have, and I think it's hereditary again. There's times where I lash out, and I still do it now, and I'll admit that, and this is what I'm trying to get help with as well. My current counsellor that I have, but again, they say to you that there's no right or wrong way of doing things, as long as we recognise it and we try and improve for next time. That's all we can ask. But again, we've got to make sure that we look after ourselves, even if it's just picking up the phone. Even if someone don't answer, we know that if we've got good friends, good family out there, that someone will be willing to talk to you and to help you, because no one wants to. I don't want to see anyone struggle. I get criticised a lot for putting myself first before others, but I think that's in your nature. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, we've got to remember that we've got to have respect for ourselves. And look at us now. We're talking. A few years ago, I would not have been doing this.
We wouldn't have given it time of day, would we?
No. It wouldn't have.
We cared about others, but we cared about gambling a lot more, and that's the blunt truth for it. What I would say, and I'm sure you'll agree through his experiences, whatever addiction you're suffering from, primarily we're gambling on this channel, but any addiction really, the best piece of advice personally I received was, when things are bad and really bad, and your mental health's bad, and your addiction's running wild, if you can manage to just stop through putting barriers in place, as I mentioned on my story, through any means, just stop, abstain, and then work on yourself. But the best piece of advice I received is, yes, things might be bad. Just because you've stopped, it's not 100% going to get better straight away. But while you're not gambling, while you're not taking drugs, while you're not drinking, or whatever addiction it is, you're not making it worse. So it might be bad, it might not improve straight away, it might do. But if it doesn't, while you're not doing, that addiction, it's not getting any worse. And that's something I took away, and it's helped me through, and I know it's helped yourself.
It has, yeah.
Just finally, before we wrap things up, we touched on earlier on in your story about you developed a sort of, you did a bit of both gambling, bit of slots and roulette and
Yeah.
things, but you did sports betting more often than not.
Yeah.
What do you think betting companies in general and the sports industry, do you think there's anything that off the top of your head, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but can do just to help a little bit problem gamblers or potentially children coming through now who's watching football? I mean, I'm going to do an episode on my own talking about dangers of gambling to children, but just be interested to see what your thoughts are.
Glad you brought that up, actually, Kieran, because I think gambling companies as a whole at the minute, this is, again, one of my biggest bugbears. There's so much advertisement out there, so many promos, so many adverts, not just on the TV, but you've got the advertising boards at various sporting events. I don't think that the government, along with the betting companies, do enough for gambling. And it speaks volumes for the amount of suicides that we've had over the past, just from me going to GA for the last 2.5 years, lots and lots of suicides cases that I've heard of. I mean, what I would like to see from the gambling companies, and again, I think the government hand in hand helps them as well. I think they should come together, and even if it's some sort of gathering or similar to GA where we can have I don't know, so in normal times, go to an event, meet up, talk to people about it. If they could put on events like that, you don't see it like that. All you see now is it's just advertising. And it's all good and well seeing when the fun stops, but again, I know you say the fun never started for us, and I know we've laughed about it, but it's a serious thing.
When you get to a stage where you're really struggling with gambling, our experience says fun never starts. Really with gambling, either out of desperation or just purely because we're being consumed. Every part of our being is just consumed by gambling. The thoughts that you go to sleep, think, as Jamie said, and it's, to me, they need to get round the table, and especially in this current COVID-19, people losing their businesses, people losing their jobs, people losing their homes, and one of the easiest things to do, I suppose, is think, how can I get money? How can I pay next month's mortgage? Well, let me try and win it. It's so easy, and at minute, I know they did a little bit to stop the advertising before 9 p.m, I think it was, but there needs to be a lot more done. There's still a long way to go. But maybe we'll talk about that in another episode. But for now, I just thank you, Jamie, for coming on and telling your story.
You're welcome.
If you can help, like I said in my video, this channel is there to help people, and hopefully put these videos in front of people at very minimum through watching them. If it lands on a person who's struggling, they see it, they hear our stories, they're feeling the same, they don't then feel alone. And even if they don't get anything from it, I mean, we've spoke about Gamblers Anonymous quite a lot. Again, we're not just pushing that, we're just speaking from our experience. There is other help out there. But if you are struggling, you're not alone. Please help us reach people who may be struggling by leaving a like, leaving a comment, subscribing, and if you want to get in touch, even if you've got a question for Jamie, my Twitter's in the description below. I will pop his Twitter in the description below. Both of us, I think, we're happy to speak to you. Messages, by all means, and like I said, hopefully we can, by spreading the awareness, do more to help people going through gambling addictions, and any mental health struggles. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time as I cut this video off amateurish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.